taking life less seriously, in the sense that it's okay to fail, is a recipe for success. And at the same time, paradoxically again, taking your life seriously is also a recipe for success. I'm not saying life is unserious, don't live it. I'm saying exactly the opposite. Life is so unserious, live it to the fullest. Risk it all. Go lean into it. You know?
Yeah. No, I think it's amazing. And hi, everyone. Welcome to Living Lightly, a podcast where we explore what it truly means to become the best version of yourself, where we talk about what is seen and heard but ignored, topics such as health, society, and how we question life and the status quo in order to reach our full potential. Today, I have Alex Levy here joining us for a very interesting and exciting conversation. Alex, I'll let you introduce yourself in just a minute, but I want to talk about a little bit about your background. You studied political science and government, and you've had numerous experiences in your field, but recently you just published your first book, The Time Is Now, which is so exciting, and I'm enjoying reading it a lot. And what is so special about you and doing this first podcast series with you is that it went from my memory of you being a child and just enjoying life and not taking anything seriously to this person who's so full of knowledge and passion for living and sharing your life and sharing what you've gone through with us. And I'm so lucky and fortunate to have you as my first guest in the podcast because I have you in my mind of this young kid who I used to share going to parties with and enjoying life with, to then we separated and we parted ways, and now you're back in my life with this amazing book, The Time Is Now, and I'm enjoying reading it a lot. I've It has reminded me of questions that I would ask myself as a young child, to how now I'm going through life and experiencing life. And there's no better way to express who we are and to share who we are than to do it ourselves. So without further ado, here's Alex Levy. If you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and who you're becoming, that would be awesome.
Thank you, Andrea. And yeah, it means a lot that you reading the book and you want to interview me, and it's insane because we've known each other from life, and just seeing how our paths unfold and how we become ourselves. And even though we might not stay connected for a while, we there's the friendship there that's for life. And so doing this kind of projects, and also congratulate you on starting your podcast. It's no easy feat, and I'm your number one fan. It's gonna go great. Your genuine approach to it, it's really commendable. And so I'm very honored to be your first host, first guest rather. Uh, I'm gonna publish this also on my podcast, so more people can go into your podcast and follow your own voice. And so a bit about me. I've been doing my podcast through conversations for the past 5 years now, and I've interviewed hundreds of brilliant minds from across all fields. You know, the intersection between creativity, philosophy, technology, sense of self, self growth, all of these questions that I ask my own self on my own time on earth, like who I want to become, and all of these notions of how I want to unfold. And while I was doing the podcast, I've also had a stint at, at my dream job. I thought it was my dream job, and also some corporate stints. I was working at a corporate job. And while navigating this journey of realizing that I'm carving a path that on paper looks great, it's actually something that I wanted to do my whole life. As an 18-year-old, this was the plan I wanted to create for me, a script that I wrote for myself. And then the paradox of feeling empty, unfulfilled, feeling like I was being robbed of my life force, that my life was being driven by someone else and not my own path. And so I was grappling with these existential questions, turning into my quarter life crisis, you could say, my 25th birthday, where like I started to realize, dude, I'm not gonna be here for my whole life. Like my time is finite. And I couldn't live any minute more, realizing that the on paper it made sense, but in my heart it wasn't making sense. It wasn't clicking. And so I started writing about these ideas for my own self. It was a personal journal. Before I went to work, I just started spitting out ideas on a Google Docs about the questions that was having on myself, about work, about the future of work, about what I wanted to do in my life. And then I started to realize that I was writing 2,000 words per day on a month basis. And then it just became like a volume of things. And I started to see the trends, societal trends, especially in our generation, Gen Z and millennials, facing these questions of meaning, career, life, the question of work life balance, that sort of thing. And I started to ask myself, hey, this is really helping me find my own voice, my own path. Why don't I create a book it's always been a life objective of me as well, but why don't I create it for someone else who might be facing the same questions? And maybe just one sentence, one idea can allow them to explore that for themselves. And so, this is how The Time Is Now, this book, A Guide to Honor Your Time on Earth, was released. It came out of a genuine interest in exploring my own questions, my own self, and asking myself, how can I really honor my time on Earth through my career, allowing my career to be an extension of myself, not an excuse to avoid who I want to become, which I believe is crucial in today's world. We oftentimes use work as an excuse. We use work as staying busy, as we have to do these things to continue life. And I believe work should be an extension of who we want to become on earth, not just something we have to do and run through the motions. And so, with that rant, Andrea, this is sort of like my introduction.
No, I love it, and thank you for being a cheerleader. And I think that's what we need in today's world, in a world where it's full of hatred and violence. Just two people that stop talking for the longest time, yet life and the beauty of life reconnected them and are focusing on helping more people like ourselves or not like ourselves find that true purpose, that true gut feeling of this feels right, this is what I want to be doing, this is what fuels me and what makes me wake up every morning and want to be better than yesterday. And I am extremely thankful and I feel such a deep sense of gratitude for your book because um like I've told you before, and it's a funny story because I remember being so insistent in text, like let's record, let's make a podcast, let's work together. And I turned to my husband and I said, oh my god, this kid's probably going to think that I'm a stalker, that I'm like obsessed with him. But no, in reality it's just that I really found myself in your podcast, in your book, in your words. And like you said, these, and I took some questions from at the end of each chapter. You write these reflection questions to think about, and I took some of them, like what are we doing with our time, how can I stay true to myself in a society that demands conformity, am I creating a genuine and meaningful path in life? And I think these are questions that mean so much to me because if I look back in time and I think of that 15-year-old Andrea, where I was starting to go to parties and talking about homework, and just those were that was my life, surviving, my main goal and expectation. And what I was doing at the time is just go to school, go to soccer practice, in the weekend do whatever with my friends and go to sleep. And I remember sharing with you that while I was at my friend's house and we would have sleepovers while they were sleeping, I was really focusing on these questions and questioning my life and myself, and trying to understand where I'm going, who I'm going with, what I'm doing, how I express myself. And I remember talking to my friends' parents and having these deep conversations, and my friends making fun of me. And for a while I stopped because I felt judged, and I felt like that time of my life wasn't to ask these deep questions, wasn't to reflect on that. It was just to live and be happy and enjoy life. And then those worries will come on later. And it genuinely felt weird. And I understood. And now I understand. Now I'm 26 and I studied sociology, and I have a deep understanding to these questions, and I like to admit that I kind of know what life is about, and I'm finding out more things as I go. But now it's kind of okay for me to ask these questions. Now people don't judge me. And I understood that at that time, it wasn't weird. It was just the ignored normal. And it continues to be the ignored normal today. And it's something that I'm not okay with. It's something that at times I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't go back to sleep because I'm curious about who are we? What are we meant to do? Where are we going? Are we meant to do something, or are we just here to live to our full potential and what that full potential means? And so, yeah, it's super interesting. And you just talked about being busy and time, so we can start there and go back and forth. But you talk about being busy, and it's in your first pages of your book. It's part of the introduction, and um it's really interesting because being busy, say it as it hijacks our time on earth. And I remember seeing the TV show Money Heist, and there's a scene where this character talks about time, and he says that we know there's 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds in 1 minute. However, if it's not the same to spend a minute underwater than a minute listening to your favorite song or playing the last minute of your favorite game. And so you realize that the problem is not time, but what we do with our time. And I think that's something that not many people reflect on. And we are constantly saying we'll do this later, or when we get to this point we'll get this done, or when we accomplish this will happen, or I don't have time, or yes later, or we're on our phones and we just don't even think about the answer we're saying to the person that is talking to us. And so if you can just share a little bit more about what time means to you, and how you've managed to go. And I remember recently reading in one of the recent chapters that I went through, that in your previous job you were doing work in the morning before going to the office, and you asked your boss if you could just get it done at the office, and to for no surprise, she or he, I don't know, you don't go in that depth of what the gender is, but you say, she the boss says no, you have to get it done. And so you start realizing that they're taking up your time, and they're telling you what to do with your time. And so yeah, if you can share more about that, and how you went from allowing someone to dictate your time to taking your own hands into the situation and just changing that in the struggles you went through, because I'm sure there's struggles that we all go through, but we don't know how to fix or correct.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. Thank you. That was great. Yeah, the movie that you referred to reminds me of In Time, the movie by Justin Timberlake. You know that it's a sci-fi movie where they have in their wrists their countdown, how much time they have, and it's the
Yeah.
currency. It's the only currency. There's no money, so people transact time, uh, wrist to wrist, and they manage, who has the most time. And at I think age 25, they stop aging, uh, but they have a countdown, nonetheless. It's a really trippy movie, and I think about it a lot. And at our age, mid 20s, early 20s, even 30s and 40s. I mean, the book is really for everyone who's having these kind of questions. We're not realizing that we're really billionaires now in the sense of time. We have this immense wealth that is not quantifiable on our bank accounts, on digits. It's really we have time ahead of us. And I came to that realization where I was robbing myself of the present moment, which is a present. Presente es un regalo in Spanish. because I was always working for a better tomorrow. And paradoxically, this better tomorrow was at the cost of my present moment. I'm going to enjoy life later at the cost of my true self today. And what we don't realize in these kind of situations is that this creates a fragmented sense of self. At least it did so for me, where you're playing this role of a postponed life. The main name of this is really the deferred life plan, meaning that you're putting this facade, this mask of yourself, in order to play the role, play the game of life, go through the motions, keep getting the promotions, even though it's at the cost of yourself. If it wasn't at the cost of yourself, something that I also want to make an emphasis on is that in the book, I try not to demonize any career or any journey. The only questioning that I'm trying to do here is, where is that root? Where is that intention coming from? Is it from a place of fear, or is it from a place of love, or where do you want to be? And so this facade, I started realizing that I was becoming my mask. I wasn't being my own self. And I think about retirement and how we think that at a 40-year career, in the future, we're going to be able to enjoy what we love doing today. But that's not true. Our souls age, our knees start to bend, we start getting fatigued. And so that mountain we wanted to climb, we don't do it because of work, because we're busy. We don't go to that baseball game and we spend it with our loved ones because we're answering emails because of work. This state of mind that you say that we're hijacked, business has hijacked our time on earth, it's true, because it's much easier to live a busy life than to live a life. It's way easier to cop out and say I'm busy than saying I'm alive. Because also, part of what I'm navigating through now, and the book again is written to myself more than anything, is that the only guarantee you have in life, when you follow your heart, when you follow your intuition, when you explore to reconnect with your intuition, because oftentimes we're just disconnected from it. I was disconnected from it. Is that it only guarantees less of what you know. It guarantees more uncertainty. It guarantees more of really sinking into the idea that I'm going to let life and serendipity and the universe and God, whoever, whatever, let care, take care of whatever it needs to care for my life. And we in the Western world and how we're raised, we're control freaks. We need to know the mechanics of how our life is going to unfold. When I'm gonna get married, when I'm gonna have the promotion, when I'm gonna be able to retire. And so we distill all of this life force to a checklist to check. We have to cross these check boxes in our lives. And for me, that was starting to make no sense. How can I feel so arrogant and so above of life that I'm reducing life itself to a checklist? What if life has a bigger surprise than me? Something that I've never expected. What if I didn't need to become the career I was leaning into, and something else more surprising was just across the aisle, but my sense of control was not allowing the door to open for serendipity, for surprises. And I think that's a more exciting way of living, for at least for me, because I know that if at least what I've learned throughout this journey is, when you follow your heart, the universe does conspire in your favor. There's pronoia, not paranoia. Pronoia is life is in your favor. What if everything turns out right? Why am I being so fatalistic? And so that's part one of all what you were discussing, Andrea. Part two is robbing your time. You said, you know, how does that feel? And in my previous job, that specific instance made me realize that working itself wasn't about the work itself, it was more about control. I control your time. I decide what to do with your life. And if one thing I want to advocate for in this interview, in this conversation with you is, and in the book itself, is that we have much more sense of agency than we think. We have much more ability to build a path that we want to, and not because someone is employing us or someone has that carrot on the stick, that we're chasing, that promotion, that dream job, that aspiration. that doesn't mean we need to bend our integrity. And this boils down into the first part, which is time is my most valuable asset, your most valuable asset, our most valuable asset. And if we stop mistreating our time, we will stop mistreating the time of others. It's just being selfless. Being selfish is paradoxically the most selfless thing we can be. I'm guarding my time so I can pour all my heart into your time. And when you're telling me that you own my time, so as someone who has high sense of agency, who wants to build their path, it's a done deal. That's all I needed to know. That's we start giving out parts of ourselves for a promised tomorrow that might never come. And so, with that, just closing that idea is that there is no bigger guarantee in taking a leap of faith that the universe will conspire in your favor. Regardless, this is not like a binding contract. It doesn't mean that you take a leap of faith, the universe is compelled and obligated to do it. It happens. It's magical. And when we stop labeling what greatness should be, when we stop thinking about how life should unfold and what's my identity and who I want to, be recognized as, that sort of thing, greatness can really emerge. And that's what's exciting. It's that uncertainty, while anxious inducing, uncertainty is also exciting, uh, because we're here in this blue dot called Earth, so tiny, so powerful, so weird, so trippy that we we might be the only species alive on the solar system that we know of, or perhaps in the universe, and we're reducing our lives to an Excel sheet. It boggles my mind. So why not allow the universe, the magic, whatever this is that we call life, to just happen to us, while we carve our path based on that sincere feeling. And so that's my whole 2 cents of what I'm trying to share with you.
No, that's amazing, and I don't think what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to create is gonna. There's not enough time in this podcast to sit. We would be sitting here for forever if we tried to solve and to try people to understand where we're coming from. But my head right now is like going to so many places. So I'm gonna start in where when you said that you wrote your book for yourself, because
Mm.
I remember texting you and saying, "Who did you write this book for?" And you literally answered, "For myself." Ha ha ha. And at first I was like, "Ha ha ha." Like no, really. And then you gave me another explanation, but I think that's amazing because you really talk about status and you talk about what people do in their everyday life, professionally and personally. And I think we live in a bubble where people do things mainly for the status and the recognition rather because it fuels them and it gives them a sense of purpose. And I think giving yourself that space to do something for yourself. And yes, you're gonna inspire and you're gonna touch many people's lives with this book, which is amazing. But the fact that you wrote it for you and for your own well-being and your own mental health and for you to put your thoughts and knowledge on paper and have that, I think it's amazing. And that leads me to, you mentioned being great, and I think um and this is what continues to happen for me with you and your book, that I think things and the next page comes and I'm like, ah, okay, here's the answer. And I was having a conversation with my husband, and he's an accountant, so he's very logical. There's emotion there, but the way he leads through life, it's logic. And I said to him, and I'm the opposite, I'm very emotional, I question everything. And I was having a conversation with him and I said, I'm having such a tough time because I want to be great, and I'm trying to be great, and I'm trying to live my life for me, but I, through my struggles and through my findings, I'm hoping to inspire other people so that if they're struggling with the same thing, they can find answers in me. And I don't know how to be great and I don't know how to do this. And he turned to me and he said, "Stop thinking. just be great. Just throw yourself out there. Just do what you need to accomplish and what your goals are, and make, I know we talked about lists and how we don't want to do checklists, but make a list of the things you want to accomplish them, and don't accomplish them because you need to accomplish them, but accomplish them because they fuel you, and accomplish them because they give you a sense of being alive and of giving you purpose, and because you want to create the person you want to be, and that's going to make you great. Stop thinking about how, just do.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me pause and reflect and stop and say, I've spent so much time reflecting on how to be great and how to get there that I've missed so much time to just do and be and create. And if you fail and you fall, you clean your knees and you get back up and you keep on trying.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads me to the word paradox, because it's a word that I've noticed you use a lot in your podcast. It's mentioned in the book, and I turned this way because I have it next to me a lot. And the literal definition of the word is a statement or a situation that seems contradictory or illogical, but might still be true.
Mm.
And I want you to touch base a little bit on that word, what it means for you, what does it mean in our society? Is our society paradoxical? How does that impact our sense of being and belonging and acting? And and yeah, why is that word something that is very connected to you, and you mention it quite a lot, so
Yeah, I do say paradox a lot and paradoxical. It's it really ties a lot of things on the way I see reality. And first of all, in terms of logical and emotional, and what you mentioned about your talks with your husband, and action, and that sort of dilemma and of paradox, you could say, is that logic doesn't have to be an enemy of emotion. That's also something that I write on the book, is that we are conscious beings who, we are evolved chimpanzees who brush their teeth twice a day. We don't know why. But we have our limbical brain, we have our emotional brain, we have the amygdala, we have, this was the first literal foundation of our brain, of who we are, right? And then the prefrontal cortex, the logical, the future thinking sense of who we are, evolved. But I keep thinking on our logic was evolved, was an aftershock of our emotions. And oftentimes in modernity, there's this battle of emotions versus logic. How René Descartes, the philosopher, said, I think, therefore I am. And that created a whole branch of what modernity in Western culture is, that we're thinking beings, not emotional beings, that those two are mutually exclusive. And I myself carved a path really rational, very logical, uh, which is perfectly fine, but it was at the expense of emotions. And so, why not question ourselves, thinking that life in itself doesn't, thinking doesn't mean to live, but also feeling means living as well. And what if we can tap into both parts of our brains and make emotions and logic allies rather than enemies? And so that's something that I wanted just to discuss a bit with you on your first part. And the question of paradox is it really boils down to my first idea here, that it's really paradoxical that we're alive. It doesn't make sense to me that we're in this reality, uh, you and me, we're sharing this conversation on a microphone and a platform that I didn't even know, like, how does it exist? There's a logical step into it, but it's magical nonetheless. Someone else made it, and put their thoughts and put their creative energy into it. Life doesn't make sense in a literal way. It doesn't make sense. And that in itself can be really disturbing thought, like, doesn't make sense, let's go crazy. But it can also be very empowering and very freeing. That there's this paradox that I know of of there is a reality, there are physical constraints to it. I'm tied up to societal norms as well. I live in a society, that sort of thing. But at the same time, there is this magical power that we can tap into, that we don't know anything about. And it's both can be true at the same time. Like you say, the paradox of being able to live reality as it makes sense while it not making sense at all. And I just feel that that in itself, that idea, I don't want to live life knowing that there's so much life energy in me, this creativity, this life force, that I have to shut down my feelings, shut down my true essence, just because we have to run through the motions. We have to really uh, play a role for society to be, like, not be uncomfortable. Um, and I'm tired of seeing people just tune down their inner colors, their inner songs, living a life of quiet desperation. That's how Henry Thoreau would say, of having these inner songs within them and not being able to explore it because we have to work. We have to run the script of life that we were told to from in the industrial age. And it breaks my heart because not a lot of people realize that this is the only life we have. And not a lot of people, like we've discussed offline as well, have the opportunity, given economical constraints and from the place that they're living to off that from rather, that they can't explore that inner song. They might even not know, they might have this burning flame within them, but they can't really put a name into it. But it follows them every single day of their life, working at a job they hate because they have to make ends meet, and because the economy is making it harder every day for us to question and follow that inner song, and explore that, have that time to have that space, to create that. And my book really is an invitation for all of us to say, what's a bigger risk? What's a bigger trade-off that you're willing to take, if you can, given your practical life where you're at, and how much can you really uh, uh, bet on this? But what's a bigger risk in life? Taking a leap of faith, exploring that, what drives you for a month, for 6 months, for a week, for maybe one certain time of the day where you're able to explore what makes you you, to ask yourself, how can I honor my time on earth? Or postponing that for a tomorrow that might never come, and that will literally take a toll in the greatest asset you have, which is your time. In our youth, we have vigor, we have life force. And if we obsess onto building a path that taps into who we truly are, then we're setting a life for complete success. Even though, like you say, Andrea, there might be failures along the way. You have to brush it up and toughen it up, and put yourself back up. But in itself, what's failure? If you really put it in, like, analyze it, failure in itself ties down into what you were saying about status games. And you might lose some reputational, social recognition if you fail, if you put yourself out there. If I post something, I usually have this cringe when I post myself stalking sometimes. But what's the cost of that? Is it the cost of other people uh, not controlling what other people's perceptions of me are? Because I can't control them at the end of the day. What I can control is what being my own fan, my number one fan, the source of where this is coming from. And failure in itself, if you fail often, you're the most successful person ever, because it means you're trying, you're putting your words into action. Part three of the book is called Action. We can't really walk. We can't walk the talk if we're not walking the talk. We really need to put ourselves out there. And that's the spoken language of reality, is just casting our fate into the daily actions that we do. And so this is the whole paradox of life, is that both things can be true at the same time, always. And there's a lot of gray areas in reality. Not everything is black and white, and navigating those currents can be excruciating, but at the same time liberating, because there's just so much room for us to grow. Um, and I don't know, I just see myself at 90 years old thinking about whether or not my checklists, which are not bad, like you just said, they're not. It's not a bad idea to create checklists, right? But if they were all tied down to a fear of a worse tomorrow, trying to prevent a bad outcome tomorrow, a lot of decisions based on the heart are forgotten. And the paradox of it all is that we might not know until we're 90. I'm not 90 yet. I'm hoping, knock on wood, I get to 90. Um, but we'll see. And I don't know, the heart has so much power, more than we think. It's just, I'm gonna send you this image after we finish, but it's like a vortex, and there's like this. It's very quantum. This is very like not sciencey, weird stuff, but it has like magnetism. You can feel someone's heart. The thing that you remember about someone really is their heart, their presence, their soul, not their accolades, not their status. If I introduce myself to you, Andrea, when we meet, let's say for the first time, and I tell you, hey, Andrea, I'm Alex. I graduated from Stanford, honors degree, summa cum laude. I got all of the um, scholarships, and now I have the best job ever. It's cringy, It's like, bro, you're using like everything you're doing is for the status game. But on the other hand, if I share with you my warmth, my sense of self, who I truly am, that's what you're gonna remember. And also, let's really put it really on an extreme example, and then I'm gonna finish so you can continue.
No,
Um,
I'm here for it.
what are people? Let me think about of it this way. What would you rather people remember from you once we pass away? How much money we made, um, how much networking we did, um, how many awards we had. Like, if people speak of me like that when I'm gone, it's for me. I'm speaking of myself. It's a mission failed. On the other hand, if they're gonna talk about how many people's lives I impacted for the good, how I threw myself out there to show that life's about positivity, optimism, that life's in your favor, not against you, that you're empowered, even morally compelled to follow your heart, to honor your time on earth, that maybe, just maybe, the world is here to favor you and it's in your odds. And regardless if it's true or not, if you live on that operating system, you might make better decisions for yourself. That you were loved, that people loved you, uh, that you loved people. More of the more of the qualitative sense of life than the quantitative. Less about the numbers and more about the depth. And that, for me, those kinds of thought exercises align me to explore my true self and invite others to do so as well. So that's the that's the whole existential rant.
No, that's beautiful, and yeah, it's a lot to unpack, and it's amazing because as you speak, I'm making notes here so I don't forget to say something. But um, I I think that as humans we need structure. We're not meant to just be put in a world and say, here's, and it's like you say, paradoxical, but we need structure. We need some sense of belonging, of where we're going, some idea, and some kind of, like, I imagine, is as if we're in the bowling alley and we have the railing. um we need some structure, but I feel like somewhere along the line we confused structure for, I can't even think of a word, but someone made the rules and they're not written rules and they're not part of the constitution, and no one gave you a handbook and said this is what you have to do, but we took that path of, I'm born, I go to school, I graduate, I go to school, and I try to get to the best school because that's gonna give me, I don't know what, prestige and status, and it's gonna get me the best job, and I'm gonna be rich, and I'm gonna have all these things that are gonna make me even have more status, and I'm gonna be able to connect with people like myself, or even with higher status that will give me more status. And then we find ourselves in our deathbed, and we're like, okay, like now what? And I think with that structure that we needed, it turned into these guidelines of who we're supposed to become and not who we want it to become, and what truly makes us happy. And I know I'm going to be repetitive with this because I think it's so important, and I think some people just say, "Ugh, this conversation again with me," because these are the type of things I talk about when I'm going for dinner and when I'm at parties. And but I think it's so important because um I don't know, I think what would happen to society if one day the entire world decides enough, and I'm not going to the bank where I work, and I'm not logging into the stock market at whatever hour of the morning, and I'm not going to uh the jury and being the lawyer, and I'm not, and I'm not doing it enough. I've had enough. I'm extremely unhappy, and I actually read this book. It's this book that's called Cleanse, and it's this guy who is a doctor, um and he is in the worst shape of his life, and he starts this cleanse. Long story short, he starts this cleanse, and now he does that for a living. And this book Cleanse, and the writer is Alejandro. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that we get so deep into who we are supposed to be according to society that we forget um, to put a stop to it and say to society enough. And I don't think we're going to live in a world where we're going to see this riot against societal norms. Um, but I think we're starting to live through an era where young people are starting to see this and understand this. And yes, I think many of us are wanting, I'm not going to include myself, many of young people are aiming to go to that Ivy League, are aiming to be that rich person, and are wanting to achieve that status. But there are many of us, which I don't think our grandparents, great grandparents, or even parents lived through this experience of people wanting to just live and let live.
Mhm.
Um, and the things that you mentioned made me think of the movie Pursuit of Happiness,
Mm.
because here's this guy who comes from a very, very low socioeconomical status, and he doesn't have anything. He actually, in one scene, sleeps in the subway with his kid. And he says, listen, I might fail tomorrow, but there's no worse than today.
Mm.
And he goes and shows up to this interview in pants that are fully painted, and he does not look like this person that has status. He didn't go to Stanford or Harvard or any other school that has prestige. He just simply is this passionate human being who wants to succeed, who wants to be better, who wants to live this life of fulfillment, and have this, like you mentioned in your book, a fire in his soul. And he gets the job, and he becomes this person that he has always wanted to become, even against all odds. And so I remember having this conversation with my little brother, who's not so little anymore, but but he truly believes that everyone has the capacity and is capable of becoming who they want to be, regardless of what their economic status is. And being someone who studied sociology, I battle with this idea because, in one side, my emotions and I'm a very positive person. I like to admit that's true because we are all capable of becoming the best version of ourselves and conquering what we want to conquer and get out of our bubble if that's toxic and just becoming better. But on the other side, there's this game of society, and we live in a very, very capitalistic world, which we know that's the best way to go about it, but it has become very toxic. And I think the world wants to continue making the very high people up there want to continue making the rich richer and kind of cover the sun with one finger, saying that the poor don't affect society. And the problems that we see down there are not a real issue because they don't affect us. And that's what society has adopted. If it doesn't affect me, then why should I care? If it doesn't affect me, why should I do something about it? But I think subconsciously they truly know that it does affect them. And that has not allowed for that person down there to bloom. And it's not because they can't, and it's not because they don't want to. And maybe now they don't want to. Maybe some gave up. But it's because of the lack of resources and the lack of knowledge that the government and I'm not going to make this governmental, and I'm not going to make this a debate about that, but has failed, and society has failed to give them a chance. And sorry, I'm almost done. Um I think on the other side, and I go so back and forth, and this is my reality, but we cannot continue to blame people for a lack of success, whatever success may mean to anyone. But it may be harder for others, and that's unfortunate, and that's something that I don't think it's ever going to change. But we cannot continue to blame others for what we do or don't accomplish. And I think that's something that you stand by and you express in your book as well. And so, yeah, I think I went very up and down and a lot of things, but I got inspired by me speaking, and so that's my take as of now.
Yeah. No, it's great, and I'm excited to also announce that I'm gonna open through conversations to a members exclusive section only, where you'll be able to access episodes earlier. I'm gonna create so many perks for you that I'm excited for. I wanted to get the best value possible, and I've been thinking on how to do it. I want to give you access to early videos. I want to give you also access to when I record an interview, that you have access real time to just watch while we record, and also to have a live stream, meaning that you can tune in and ask your own questions, your Q&A to some of your favorite guests, and also some of the guests that you don't really know yet, but you would love to hear. And also that way you have some sort of skin in the game as you're supporting the podcast in some way and you're more invested in the success of it. And so I'm excited for this. There's a lot of truths to a lot of what you say, and a lot of them can coexist. Again, for the paradox, using the paradox, it can be true at the same time that some people who are greedy and are using the capitalistic system for their own advantage are using others as just pawns in their game. It can be true also at the same time that a lot of billionaires, uh, actually like the ones that we really think about the most, that are top of the ladder, are trickling down a lot of wealth for other people, for them to really have jobs, for them to really have economic uh, innovations, for them to have a computer on their palm of their hands. You know, the phone, you have a computer which is $1,000 or $500 now, the new iPhone, and you can create really, it's a computer. It's something that it's faster and much more powerful than the first space rocket that we threw to land on the moon, and it's in the palm of your hands. So it can be true at the same time that some people are using the system for their advantage, but also that we're benefiting from their own push towards more wealth or more innovation. We're living in an age where there's a lot of uncertainty. On top of our own personal uncertainty that we've discussed so far, we're driving into the age of artificial intelligence, of technological boom. A lot of people might be laid off. A lot of people might find themselves asking their own selves, "Hey, if AI can do my job better than me, are the blood, sweat, and tears worth it? Like, is it really worth it sacrificing, skipping the Christmas dinners with my family, the holidays with my family, uh, when AI can do it better than me? Like, is it logical at this point?" And our generations, younger generations, are gonna face this reality where really we have a choice. It's a choice of understanding that maybe the systemic currents and maybe what's happening on the outside world, it's out of our control and might be playing against us, or trying to use that same system, you said the capitalistic system, on our favor, which also has its perks. Capitalism really does value the best creation out there.
Mhm.
It does allow the luck factor to exist, serendipity to emerge. It's the marketplace, the battle for ideas. The best idea wins, and that means that it's the most open playing field there is. And so we can either choose conformity and passiveness, saying, "Yes, I was laid off of my job. I'm now resentful for AI and all of the companies, and now I'm demanding universal basic income to sustain myself." Uh, and that in itself is a really, uh, again, dark rabbit hole, because if we think of life that way, rather than taking advantage of that opportunity that AI might liberate us from jobs we don't want to do, we might be really bored and busy our whole life. We might be living the movie, what's the name? Pixar, Wally. You remember Wally? How all of them were fat and just bored and desperate? It might happen. A lot of people might just come passive and have an AI girlfriend, and stop having relationships and human connections and delegating life to AI, being passive. That's one side. And the other one is I can use these technologies, I can use this, what's happening on the system to create my own game, to be the king of my own game, to decide what game I want to play, to realize that if AI is doing the job that I don't want to do, that relates to just busy work and repetitive work, I might be able to tap into my creative potential. And I do see this is just like an outlook of what I think AI might do for us. It will allow us to free up time to lean into what really matters to us. There's gonna be a lot of, at least I hope, a lot of booming industries related to human connections, to human gatherings, to connecting with one another, to connecting with our own sense of selves, creating new passion projects. We might see the emergence of new, Dalis and Einsteins that were, rather than being focused on working their 9 to 5, they're focused on creative output. We might put more premium into humanities, and we might allow, uh, you know, the sort of and a lot of people love numbers and science, so that's not also, it's not going to go away either. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting, because what all of what you say, it's true, and it can be true, but at the end of the day, I ask myself, what perspective on life gives me more power to impact others? What perspective on life, on the systemic shocks that are happening, allows me to become and feel empowered and have this sense of agency? And I want to invite more people, of all generations, to realize this, that the passivity card of just we have to go with the current, uh, is really robbing of your own time on earth. You have to be selfish in that sense. You have to be selfish. You have to realize that the world is also here for you, and you have to play the game that you want to play. And again, we can't control the outcome. We can't control how it's going to unfold. What we can control is the effort and the heart that we put into it. So
And I'm just going to play the devil's advocate because you said how AI is being part of our life, and we're seeing it being a powering force, and it's very intense. What's to come, and I know a lot of people worry, and now in a very, like, for example, like chat gpt, where we go in and we type what we want to say, and then it creates this beautifully contracted email for us. And so I wonder, like, we've seen how throughout history technology has played a role in our life where it has actually separated us, and now we're very busy on our phones and our Netflix and our computers, and we have spent less time outdoors with our loved ones and more because we're stuck here.
yeah,
um and we've become very lazy as a society, and we want that quick fix. um do you actually believe, and maybe this is not an opinion on your end, I'm honestly, I lack that aspect of the education with AI, but that this new boom of AI is gonna leave space for people to spend more time being creative and create and showing their true selves and spending more time together, instead of, oh, I have more free time and sync. Do you are you being optimistic? Are you being positive? Is this something that really is going to bring society closer together because we're going to have more time, or is it going to sink? Are we going to sink more because we're going to have more time, and we've spent so much we spend so much time um living this game and playing this game that we've disconnected from our intuition or our emotions. And I'm gonna let you answer that, and then I'll come back to where I was going with intuition, but so that we don't get lost in so much talking.
yeah. So here's another existential rant. It really boils down to the person, how the individual wants to use these technologies. And I've hosted a lot of people on the show, on my podcast through conversations, um, on technology. And one of the biggest themes that I see on people who are studying technology and neuroscience and just data and privacy and that sort of thing is that they echo the same idea, which is technology in itself is neutral. It's how people use it that it becomes good or bad. And of course, there's going to be a lot of people, probably the majority of people, saying, I'm going to use this to just, again, like how we started our conversation, I'm going to use this to become busy and to really not look to myself in the mirror and use these technologies to the improvement of myself, the better of myself and of others, and to create that business I always wanted, and to become entrepreneurial, and to create that service or that nonprofit, whatever it is. I'm going to use these technologies for that, which is part of the cards that are on the table. You know,
Yeah.
it's either create your own simulation of scrolling on the internet, or create a reality using leveraging these technologies.
Mm.
And so it boils down to really the individual, how they see these technologies improve their lives, and if they really have the perspective on, oh no, this is just another market pool on how much money they can make, or is it an opportunity for me to realize my potential. And so I'm gonna leave that answer short, because I know that we have a lot more to unpack. So that's
Yeah.
my
No, I like it. I think it's a good answer. I think we have the power to decide what we want to do with our life, and a lot of times that gets lost because, like you said, we leave it up to someone else. And I don't know where in my notes it is, but I was writing how we have gotten used to dancing and putting up a show for others, but we don't even get to choose the music or the dance moves.
mm,
And I think that that leads me to intuition, because you talk a lot about intuition in your book, and the power that it has in making decisions just because they feel right, and just because we are certain, or maybe not certain, but we feel deep in us that this decision based on intuition that we're making is going to take us to where we want to be. And that reminds me a lot of how intuition is impaired and the traumas that we go through as a society and as members of society. And I think when we think of trauma, we think a lot of crazy big traumas like I was kidnapped, I was raped, I lost a loved one traumatically, I was in a car accident, I was in a plane accident, and we forget that traumas can be in very different shapes and colors and forms. And I think as a society, we have experienced deep, deep trauma of what it means to be alive and what it means to follow your path and what it means to be creative. And we just don't categorize as trauma because we're too focused on the traumas being the things that I mentioned. And the worst part is that we don't realize that's trauma, so we can't fix it. And this trauma creates so many anxieties. And I'm saying a lot of words, but I'm not giving an example. It's like you you go through this path of going to the best school and to have this amazing job, and all these expectations start to come with it, and the expectations move faster than what we can accomplish, and then we can't accomplish those expectations, and that affects our brain and our decisions. And you talk about the amygdala, and the amygdala is literally, if you just go down and center, you find it deep in the right the center, almost the center of your brain. Um and your amygdala really deals with emotions and feelings, and your hippocampus as well with memory. And when you undergo so much societal trauma, and you continue to be unhappy and continue to fail at being this best version of yourself and being happy, the amount of stress and anxiety that later on, if not dealt with, depression, impair your intuition. And I have been so lucky to have realized my anxieties at a young age, and I've actually have been a patient of EMDR, sorry, and that stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And what we do is process all the information that happens in our brain and focus on healing that amygdala
Hmm.
through our nervous system. Because, like my nervous system, I can't imagine the rest of the people's nervous system, um, who are still subconsciously living through this life thinking that that is what they're supposed to be doing. Um, their amygdala has a lot of trauma and has a lot of it's hyperactive
Hmm.
constantly. And so our nervous system is constantly getting these flight or fight moments that we don't have a time and a space to just chill, pause, stop. Don't go to work that day if you can't. Don't leave your house. It's okay. Reflect. And society doesn't give us that space. And by not having that space and that pause, you cannot lead with your intuition.
Mhm.
And I think this is something that society doesn't talk about. It's such a taboo to not be okay.
Hmm.
It's such a taboo to have anxieties. It's such a taboo to have to be depressed. Now less than it used to be. Um Now being anxious is the norm, which also it's concerning, um but yeah, I think uh it's it's saddening to see that we live in a society where we cannot become this true version of who we are, and 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 be successful. And when I say successful, I don't mean economic success, and I don't mean status, and that can be true for many, and that's amazing. It's totally okay. But to reach success, whatever that may mean for everyone, to not be able to do that because of the traumas and anxieties and depressions that society has created, and not even realize it so you can fix it. It's concerning. It makes me sad. And I think that's the reason why I'm here with you today, to share with others, whether they're younger, our age, or older than us. There's, like you say, the time is now, and there's always time to reflect. There's always time to heal. There's always time to fix and to fall and to get back up and to create that best version of yourself that you're so desperately looking for, but might not even realize it at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It's really the time is now is really to explore our humanity. I think we owe it to ourselves that, and we're constantly bombarded with so much stimuli that it really fries our amygdala, and we start to think that that's the natural state of being, always being fight or flight. And like you say, that doesn't allow intuition to come into the equation. That doesn't allow us to really connect to the magic of life, to serendipity in life. There's this guy that I quote on the book called Rick Rubin, who really he wrote The Creative Act. It's an amazing book, but he's always someone who's extremely intuitive. Like he didn't study music, he didn't study any uh, musical theory. He's just a guy who listens to music and understands the cues of life and the universe, and things happen. So, for example, he was assisting a band. He was working with a band called System of a Down, which is like a rock band, like heavy rock sort of thing. And the lead singer, I'm butchering the story a bit. I'm gonna put it in the notes as well, so you can watch it. And also, our team is gonna put like a brief interview here on the B-roll. But the main singer was extremely concerned. He was like on this frustration, creative frustration, because he couldn't find the specific word that would fall into place in the chorus of the song. Like it was just the only thing that he needed, I think, between the bridge and the chorus, something like that. And here's Rick Rubin, who says, the answer is always there. The universe is always giving you the answer. It's just the matter of your perspective, the matter of your of where you are standing to be able to receive it. And he told the lead singer, you know what? Keep asking this question. Keep looking for it. The answer is there. Why don't you go find the book, move the book, scroll, like just do like let me show with my own book. The time is now, how it looks like. Just like go like this and put your finger on one part of the book. He did that, and it became the number one song of the band. It became the best song. It was like how he and the word itself doesn't make sense. I think so. That's the story. I'm gonna look into it after we finish. But it connected everything. So
Yeah.
the universe is giving you the answers. The universe is playing this game with you, but we're putting this cut between our umbilical cord and that signal, that no, that really that visibility on life, because we're bombarded with uncertainty, with anxiety. We're also thinking on all these currents of life, and it's just a disservice to us. It's a disservice to our time on earth. And yes, on one hand, a lot of people are experiencing anxiety and depression, and that's and it's good that we're talking about it. I'm concerned on one hand that a lot of people might use this as also a cop out. I can't explore my colors because I'm anxious.
Yeah.
And the best recipe for anxiety, at least for me, that I faced it with, is action, like we spoke about. Is
Hmm.
really doing stuff, failing, leaning into what really, you know, the only way you can really have that signal is putting yourself out there. For example, I've been doing a lot of open mics, stand up comedies for a bit now. Like I've been doing that because I love some. I'm trying to, I'm failing, uh, and I bombed on my last stand up. Like I said a word that wasn't really politically correct. I didn't know about it on the time. Of all the the reasons why I thought I was gonna bomb, I never expected that because I didn't know it was a politically incorrect word. And so that in itself, while it became a failure on the, like, on the stand up, I have another story for another stand up, It's just it's really funny how life works. And so taking life less seriously in the sense that it's okay to fail is a recipe for success. And at the same time, paradoxically again, taking your life seriously is also a recipe for success. I'm not saying life is unserious, don't live it. I'm
Yeah.
saying exactly the opposite. Life is so unserious, live it to the fullest. Risk it all. Go lean into it, you know?
Yeah. No, I think it's amazing, and um I can't remember what you said that triggered me to think about quick fixes. Um, I think we live in a society where everything we want it quick. We want it now. We want to see the change now. Even I catch myself driving on the freeway, and I live in San Diego, so everything's super spread out. And you spend a minute in the car and you've moved nothing, and it's still miles and miles away where you're going. And I'm like, if I could only just press a button and be there. Or we're going on a long flight and you're like, if I could just press a button and be there. Or we want to get a job, if I could just press a button, skip the interviews and just have the job. And I think that's for everything from our health to what we do in our in our everyday. I have a headache, and you don't stop and say, I didn't drink water, I'm stressed, I didn't sleep enough. You just take the Advil or take the Tylenol. Or I think we see it now with Ozempic, how I want to lose weight, let's just get injections. Uh we can't sleep, and instead of thinking, oh, maybe I need to go speak to someone because I have so many stressors in my mind, no, let's just pop the pills and fall asleep. And I think quick fixes are a huge part of our life, um because everything on the other side, taking that step, like you said, oh, you're talking about anxiety and how we have to just take action. Um and whoever says they've never felt anxious, they're lying. I think anxiety is part of our life. And like you say, sometimes we use it to sabotage ourselves rather than become stronger. But I think taking that step is far more scary. And seeing what's behind the door is far more scary than staying unhappy in what you're doing. And we don't understand that, like you say, we just have to take the leap of faith and give us that benefit of the doubt, because
Yeah.
our brains and our minds are far more strong than we give them credit for.
Yes.
And and we've convinced ourselves that we cannot categorize ourselves. Society loves boxes and categories, so we put ourselves into boxes, and we are ourselves our worst enemy. And our brain doesn't understand the difference between being chased by a lion, or for
Yeah.
hopping on that flight, or
Mhm.
going to that interview, or speaking to that person that you're attracted to.
Yeah.
It's a fear, and it's a threat, and that's how our brain sees it. So I just um want to tell whoever will be listening and is listening to let that chase begin. Let yourself be chased by a lion, and see what happens, and embrace life and love life. And this is not to encourage people to quit that job and to just
Mhm.
throw their life out the window, but just to slowly, while you show up to work that might not make you happy, start thinking about changes. Because no one works 24 hours. You work 8 hours, maximum nine, maybe 10. You have plenty of more hours, even if it takes, even if all you have is 5 minutes. Spend 5 minutes a day really reflecting on who you truly want to be. And that will make a difference. I've lived very closely with people who at times are not happy, but they don't know, including myself, but don't know how to create making that change. And I think there's no, like I started the interview, what you write about, they're very complex things to understand, not because they're complex, not because it's rocket science, but because society has trained us. to not focus on these things. So to make that change is extremely difficult,
Yeah.
and but it's possible. And so I really, really want to thank you for saying and admitting what many people want to but can't, or don't want to admit it's true, but it is. And I am excited to read the next half of your book. And I'm excited to keep in touch with you. I'm excited to see where life takes you, where life takes me, and where life takes this. And I really thank you. I think that's the word that is easy, but it means a lot. And I really mean it.
Thank you, Andrea. I really appreciate it. And likewise to you. It's really mind blowing to hear that, you're halfway through the book and that ideas are resonating. It's weird, putting yourself out there and just seeing that it might make sense for someone else. So thank you for that. And thank you for your support. And I'm very excited for your own journey. I'll be rooting for you, and we'll see where this leads to. And we'll definitely have another conversation. I'm sure we can speak about this for a whole day. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me, Andrea. Or rather, thank you so much for you allowing me to join you, which is, it's weird because I'm usually the host. So I appreciate it.
We're co-hosts in
Yeah.
the journey. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.